Welcome to the Love of the Star podcast. I am Bobby Belt, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105 through the Fan in Dallas. That is your radio flagship home of the Dallas Cowboys. Joined as always by former Super Bowl winning NFL scout and former Dallas Cowboys scout, Brian Broaddus. He is now the co-host of the G-Bag Nation, 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday. You can catch him on 105 through the Fan there. And you can also catch him as the pre- and post-game co-host on the Dallas Cowboys radio network. And Brian, I was about to say, how are you doing? But I'm going to ask instead, you seem put out by the long bio that you have. I see you just said, yeah, get through it. Let's get through it. Let's finish my bio.
I never get to introduce you as and this is my partner here, Bobby Belt, who is on
professional slapdick. Yeah,
who's on Sean and RJ, who is on the NFL Network, who is on everything that you ever imagined Dallas Cowboys related. Bobby Belt is part of that, and a very, very capable host. If you haven't learned by now, here on Love of the Star. So, Bobby, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Playoffs, baby. Cowboys are in the playoffs. That's the headline coming out of this weekend, I think, is that the Cowboys are in the playoffs. Certainly nothing else relating to just absolutely, essing the bed there in Jacksonville in the final 25 minutes. Final 20 minutes of regulation, then the 5 minutes of overtime. I guess, we can just start with a broad sweep. I know you've got a chance to see the film. I was in Jacksonville in the locker room, gathered a bunch of different thoughts, but your main takeaway coming out of this game, Brian?
Bobby, we talked about how we thought it was going to be a tight game and really thought that maybe both defenses would be under attack in this game. And I kind of felt like that early in this game and then some into the third, the Jacksonville defense was under attack. And it really wasn't until my turning point of the game, Bobby, and I said this on the Cowboys postgame show, I really felt like that the pass that Joseph gave up to Jones for the touchdown, I felt like that's where this game really turned. And it, unfortunately for, the Cowboys, unfortunately for their defense, it all of a sudden became a game and you couldn't really, do anything. And then Jacksonville had all this momentum. And then it wasn't until they got the lead that all of a sudden that, oh, wait a minute, we're playing in a football game here. We need to try and win in order to get into the playoffs or keep, division title hopes alive.
Yeah.
And, Dak on a great drive. But I really, really felt like that once that ball went past Joseph on the double move, it was game on from that point on. And give Jacksonville a lot of credit. Everybody out there knows that I'm friends with Doug Peterson. Trust me, I wasn't pulling for Doug Peterson this game. I wanted the Dallas Cowboys to have an opportunity to play for the division title. But I thought that Doug did a great job. He's got a young quarterback that he's really kind of figured things out. And they're a good football team. ATN, what they were able to do on offense, the scheme that they have. People have kind of figured out about playing the Cowboys. Don't let them rush the passer. And even though when they had opportunities to rush the passer, they couldn't get Trevor Lawrence on the ground. And I think that when you go back and when everybody has a chance out there to watch the All-22, you're going to see several times where you're going, damn, and you're going to just keep saying that to yourself because there were opportunities there to end this game in regulation. And then there were also opportunities to put the Jaguars away there, well before that.
So it's interesting. You point to that turning point there at the throw to Zay Jones, the 59-yard touchdown, which in a lot of ways this felt like it mirrored the Green Bay meltdown. You had a big time performance from a receiver who had been struggling with drops, I might add. Right. Zay Jones and Christian Watson both had that issue. Both of them break out 6 catches over 100 yards, 3 touchdowns. and ultimately force a game into overtime and, come out with the victory on top. I want to talk about a specific play before we dive into, a lot of the bigger takeaways from this, but I'm curious for your thoughts on this because I don't know how much discussion has been about this. I thought Dak played really, really great actually for most of the day. I mean, sure he had a throw here or there, but I don't think that it was. I think he cleaned up a lot of the things that have concerned us the last 2 weeks. I think he looked really good for the most part. One of the issues I had yesterday, and I was internally screaming my head off. You can't scream your head off in the press box; they will take you out of there.
It's a working environment. You cannot cheer or scream, either one.
That's what I had to tell Joe Trahan from Cowboys PR when he was cheering when Argentina scored. I told him, I said, this is a working press box. You are not allowed to cheer. They will take you out of here. But I was watching that 3rd and 3 when they were up 24-10, and he throws the ball down the sideline to Pollard. Made a decent throw, ultimately falls incomplete. It looked like he had Noah Brown for the first down underneath. And I was watching the play as I saw it develop. I was going, oh, he's going to hit Noah Brown. It's going to be, and then I saw him throw the ball downfield. I was like, what's happening? Was that Dak getting too greedy? Is that one of the few mistakes he made? Because I feel like you've got the easy first down. They keep the drive alive. Maybe they score a touchdown. They run more clock off. They put this out of reach. Ultimately, drive ends there. They kick a field goal. Jacksonville comes back, scores real quick, and everything snowballs from there.
Man, I'll tell you what, you hit the nail on the head because that thing opened up just beautifully. Yeah, you get the route up the sidelines, and that's Dak playing hero ball right there. If he just hits Noah Brown running across the field, that thing's up the field. It's a first down. Now you're knocking on the door of putting that game really away for the Cowboys. So I felt like there were a couple of different times where he got a little greedy, and you're absolutely right there. That ball needs to be thrown underneath first and then work from there.
And overall, I thought it was a pretty decent day. I know you I give him a little bit more of a pass on the interception, the first one, because there was a defender, I think it was Dwayne Smoot or somebody, had an arm that was pulling on his bicep, and that makes sense to me why the ball sailed as far as it did. But you had an issue actually with the double clutch, and I know Mike McCarthy had talked about the fact that he thinks Dak needs to just get rid of the ball in that scenario.
Right.
But overall, what were your thoughts on what did you see on that play breaking down, and what you think Dak should have done on that?
Yeah, I think it was once again, Bobby, one of those times where they didn't pick up the twist particularly well, and that was to the side of Jason Peters. And so, at that right side, so you got Dak moving to his right, and Peters he's trying to kind of control his guy, and he's really not. And so now what happens is he's moving to his right, and he's got Schultz sitting in front of him. Now, you and I have had this discussion before in a Commanders game when he threw the ball right to Holcomb where he never saw the linebacker. Just straight shot, and now it's a problem, And so here he is, Jaguar defender between him and really Schultz, and the defender is still where you can maybe the flash of the black jersey, just that color he saw. And it's like he takes it and he pulls it down. He's loading it down. So then he tries to recock, and then that's when your guys falling, guys grabbing, and then the ball goes high. Schultz had settled down to give him a shot. The flash of the color from the end zone is already past him left. And so if he throws the ball, it's likely a catch and going forward and, that type of play. But once he double pumps and then he tries to recock it or reload, that's really when everything starts to fall apart for him, and then the ball goes high. So it was, you could take a sack, throw it away, throw it in the ground, live to fight another day. But that's not Dak's MO. It's just that's what we're learning about Dak. And here we are 7 years into it. Dak doesn't want to give up on plays.
Yeah.
He just doesn't want to give up on a play. And he saw Schultz open, much like he thought he saw Tony Pollard open down the sidelines.
Yeah.
You know, it just wasn't there. And he got a little greedy. And I'm telling you, when you watch the All-22, you will see him take the ball, think about it, pull it down, and then retry it again.
So those were the two plays to me that stuck out as ones that you can really question in terms of where I thought you can make a legitimate argument that was just a bad play. Outside of that, because I do think there's a little bit of a narrative that people just see 2 interceptions, they see them blow a lead, and there's this default to go to, well, Dak Prescott played terribly. I saw an article from Deadspin today that goes, this is more proof Dak doesn't have it, blah, blah. I personally thought, and again, I know everybody likes to say I'm the Dak homer, but I thought outside of those 2 plays, I thought he played excellent. What were your thoughts in general, the 1,000-foot view of how Dak played as a whole?
Well, I'll tell you what, at halftime, I remember visiting with Zach Wolchuk on the Cowboys, the halftime show after that. And I believe Dak was 15 of 16 at that point in time. And I'm sitting there going, man, can he be any better? I mean, the way this thing was rolling, the receivers were helping him, the tight ends, the backs, the running game, everything was really coming together. They were rotating the offensive lineman. That was kind of, it was looking okay with Tyron Smith over there. And, you just couldn't imagine him playing any better. And, the second half came and Dallas gets these points in time at games where they lose the consistency, or they lose that ability to finish. And in the first half, they're just, you talk about slow starts, fast starts, and, but then they get in these points in time of the game where they lull. And then all of a sudden lull turns into punt, and then it turns into turnover, another punt, a turn, you're just like, where's the consistency? And I think that's the biggest issue. And I think it starts with the play caller, and then it goes to the quarterback. And then ultimately what happens is the team has those inconsistencies in it, and everything that was working, every little pass and run and block and motion and play call, everything that worked for a half, it looks like they've never run a play in their life. Things happen, things break down, and then ultimately though they're in a ball game. People are now they're chasing points, and then it's like, oh wait, we've got to come back in this game. Well, here we go. Now, wait, they played cover 2 the whole game. Well, let's just shred cover 2 now. And that's really how this Cowboy offense, and it's the quarterback. And like I said, sometimes he does things that he shouldn't do. And then other times he makes some of the most damnedest throws you'll ever see in your life. And you're going, that the spin out touchdown that they scored on with Noah Brown. I mean, that's spinning out of a problem and running left and throw into a guy who's coming back for the ball. You're like, not many quarterbacks in the league have that kind of ability. And that's the thing that's a little maddening when you watch the Cowboys offensively, is they're capable of doing stuff like that every snap. They're just not consistent enough doing it.
What happened from what you saw on tape? What happened to the running game in the second half? Because they were having some success. They couldn't get anything going in the second half. And I'll dovetail for a second. I have an issue with, I was texting Jane Slater, our friend from NFL Network. I was texting her about this. I mentioned it this morning on Sean and RJ. I feel like Kellen Moore doesn't have a great feel for the flow of games. Like it's almost, he just has this rigidity of like, this is what I'm going to call and this is what we're going to do. And there are times where it's like, I felt like you couldn't stop the passing attack yesterday for the first 3 quarters.
Yeah, I heard you this morning on the radio talking about that like, why are you running the ball 20-something times when they haven't stopped you throwing the ball yet, kind of a thing.
Yeah. And I mean, why are you why are you running a stretch run to Zeke for one and trying to do a jet sweep to CD for one? And then, okay, now it's 3rd and 8, and now you overthrow Noah Brown and you're punting.
Yeah.
And then there are other times where it's maddening where you're like, all right, this is clearly a situation to run the ball, and then you're throwing it. It just seems like that he doesn't have a great sense for, and obviously I know we're armchair quarterback in here, but it feels at times like he doesn't have a great sense for the flow and the temperature of the game. But that's kind of a side topic. Primarily, they I believe had 21 carries for like 95 yards in the first half, perfectly efficient. Second half, I think it was 17 carries for like 50 yards. I mean, they were under 3 yards a carry, I believe. What did you see on tape that happened with the running game?
Yeah, I mean, there were some opportunities where they had the 7-man box, and they just didn't do a very good job of point of attack blocking. Again, there was that change the offensive line. Was there consistency with, Jason Peters? Let's be honest, Bobby. To me, Tyron Smith is your starter at right tackle.
Yeah.
Ball is his backup at right tackle. Jason Peters needs to be the backup at left tackle, and don't mess with it the rest of the day.
Jason Peters played bad football.
He did. He did play bad football yesterday. And a little bit of it was, I think because he's a 40-year-old guy.
Sure.
I think there were some times where, that it wasn't as clean as it was. I mean, in the Houston game, it was all about throwing the football. It's pass set, pass set, pass set. In this game, you had to run the football. And, I'm not going to say that they sat there and loaded the box and you couldn't run the ball, because there were several times where it wasn't. There were times where they would put trips to one side and try and hand the ball off inside, taking guys out, and still couldn't run the ball there. So I just think that you were in a bad shape when Jason Peters was on the field, especially when it came to running the football. You just didn't get the movement or the combinations or the athletic play that you get normally from the center. I mean, there were times, like I said, when they were trying to get the ball into off the edge and all that, and I mean, he's struggling with the block. They're struggling. They can't get the cutoff. All these things start to happen. But I honestly, I think you have that corrected now, Bobby. When you and I were on the G-Bag Nation, when you came on for your spot, at 5:30, we were talking about that situation with the offensive line. You've got your right tackle now. You've got your right guard. You got your center. You got your left guard, and you got your left tackle. Just go to battle with that. I don't see any more reasons, unless you want to give Tyler Smith a blow, during a game to kind of keep Jason Peters engaged. I don't see any reason any longer to shuttle out these offensive linemen. I really, really don't.
Last question here before we transition to some of the discussion about corner and what's going on with Kelvin Joseph now. I'm curious, one more play I want to isolate that's not getting a lot of discussion, I think. An opportunity at the end of the first half. Dak hits Pollard on a swing pass. They pick up a first down, get a couple more plays, set themselves up on 3rd and 1, and they run this
the flip
pitch,
option
pitch. And I can't remember who the defender was there. It may have been Devin Lloyd. I don't remember, but somebody was right there, swallowed up Pollard, -6. What did you think about that? Did you have any thoughts on that specific play design, how that was executed? And was that a missed opportunity? I mean, if they pick up that first down, you're talking about even more points going into halftime.
It's one of those plays we like to say is cute, but if you watch overtime, they did it to Pollard for 20 yards. They came back and ran. Yeah. They ran the same play. And it's like Kellen Moore, like you're talking about, Bobby, flow of the game. It's like, oh, wait, I just had a -7 on this play.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go ahead and later, when I need overtime yards, what do? I run it to Pollard for 20.
Run it back.
Yeah. So I thought yesterday there was some creative times with Kellen Moore. I mean, I don't have a problem. I mean, I'm one of these guys that like, hey, attack the line on 3rd and 1. Don't take the
What
ball
what,
away
what
from them.
happened then? There did Jacksonville just have it read clean, or did somebody?
They read it clean. But I'll tell you another thing. They ran counters. Dallas ran counters and didn't block the backside end, and the crash end was killing them on some plays. Now I don't know, do you block, you step down and turn back? Maybe you're thinking, oh, that guy, unless you pull the ball and run behind that guy is always going to just keep crashing on you. And maybe that's where, when you got in that situation where the Cowboys were trying to figure out on that 3rd down to kill the clock, maybe not on 3rd down, but to me, a really, really good call would have been that flow, that counter flow, and then boot Dak and throw to the tight end for 9 yards. So now it's 2nd and 1, clock's running. Oh, timeout. Now you run the ball, 1st down, timeout. Then run the ball again, timeout. Now the game's over. Now the game is legitimately over. If you're the Cowboys on that sequence where you get the negative for 3, you get the gain of like 4, and then you're like in 3rd and 10 or whatever it was, you gain, you lose 3, you gain 3,
Yeah.
and now it's 3rd and 10. So throwing the ball down the field, if you were going to, the way I would have done it myself, and I was saying this to Zach Wolchek, in that situation, throw on 1st down. If you're gonna throw it all, throw on 1st down and go hard play action, boot it, and then throw the easy ball to Dalton Schultz for 9 yards. Keep the clock moving. They're burning timeouts. You run, get a 1st down. Now they're burning more timeouts. Game's over, like I said. So to me, that's, it's not run, then throw. It's throw, run, kill the game is what it is. If you're going to throw the ball at all in that situation, in that series, you got to throw it on 1st down, because they're expecting you to try and run clock. That's what they're expecting you to do. Yeah. And so I thought a couple of his calls were a little bit, the 50-50 ball to Noah Brown, to me, is not a good call. 50-50 ball to Michael Gallup, I think, is a better call, because I've seen Michael Gallup go up, high point ball, get ball. And I've also seen Michael Gallup draw pass interference penalties going up for the ball, because he's going up and the defensive back gets all tangled up with him. That, to me, personnel call, man, all that stuff was a little wonky in this game for that situation.
You're listening to the Love of the Star podcast. The Love of the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. Brian, we've been talking a lot about the offense. Let's look over at the defensive side of the ball. A couple different headlines here. Let's start, obviously, with the cornerback position. Dan Quinn said on Monday, talked to the reporters, he basically said Kelvin Joseph doesn't have the job anymore. It hasn't been completely stripped away, but it's a competition now. And he was benched late in the game in favor of Nashawn Wright. Got beat on 2 touchdowns, got beat really bad on a double move. And you saw instantly how he knew he messed up, and he turned around and is like grasping, trying to just do anything to slow that down. But, they've got real problems with that cornerback spot opposite of Trayvon Diggs, and they've had problems all year with it.
Yeah, they had, Bobby. And, but we've talked about this a bunch on this show, and, I'm not trying to guess at this stuff. I'm not trying to just make stuff up.
Right.
Always talk about Kelvin Joseph playing in off coverage, right?
Yeah.
Kelvin Joseph in off coverage is not a good combination for him to play. He plays back and you run a double move on him, he's going to get fooled, because he's going to drive on the ball. He's going to be aggressive. That's his nature. Kelvin Joseph is a man corner. You put him up, you let him jam, you let him hold, you let him run with, you let him turn. You don't play him in a situation where he's having to read from depth.
Right.
It's just, he doesn't have enough experience. He just doesn't. He hasn't. I mean, it was a good route by Zay Jones. It really was. But that's where all of a sudden you're putting a guy in a situation. They didn't try the double move on Diggs. They tried it on Joseph. They
Right.
knew that if they could get that ball going down the field and he was going to bite because they was playing from depth. So is that on Kelvin Joseph? Sure. Is that on Dan Quinn and them? Yes, it is. It's absolutely on Dan Quinn and the secondary for putting him in that situation. And I know you can't play man coverage the whole day, but I watched Diggs on the other side play up on guys all day.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Joseph, Nahshon Wright. Me personally.
Was that an issue you saw in college with Joseph at all?
He didn't play, Bobby. He didn't play very much.
But when you saw him, did you exclusively see him in press man, or did you see?
I thought yes, that's what he does.
Because you know who you're describing to me. It sounds like the player it reminds me of, and I don't know if you remember. I know you remember scouting the player. I don't know if you remember these specifics about him. The guy you're describing to me sounds like you remember Cordrea Tankersley coming out of Clemson.
Clemson, right?
Yeah, he was great in press man, and he played off, and he was lost.
He was lost, yeah.
And that sounds like the guy you're describing to me.
See, that's where I'm looking at him, but he's really out there trying to survive, just to try and get experience, And then on the second touchdown, I felt like he got bullied a little bit. Jones.
Watkins needs to finish that sack is the biggest.
No, that exactly right. That's what we were talking about earlier. A lot of opportunities to finish and not finish it, and allowing the throws. But to me, okay, there's a competition. Fine, him, right? Me personally, do you look at Mackenzie Alexander, who they brought on a couple weeks ago, and say, hey, all my buddies around the league tell me Mackenzie Alexander is a really good slot player, or that's his best trick, slot player. Do you trust him enough to play the slot and then also put Bland on the outside? That's what this might come to. If they don't find something suitable at that left cornerback spot, then maybe you put Bland on the outside and put Alexander inside, and then you go to battle that way.
What did you think of the way Bland played on Sunday? I know he had two really nice pass breakups. He had the interception, but overall, how did you think he played?
I thought he was fine. I didn't, there wasn't anything,
He doesn't get rattled. He is so.
No, hell no. It's like the kid, it's like he's done this all his life.
Yeah.
He's physical when he needs to be. He could tackle well enough. 4 interceptions this year?
Yeah.
Come on, man. If Anthony Brown would have had the same year as what we're seeing from Bland, I look like a damn genius talking about how good I thought Anthony Brown was going to be. We saw things in camp with Bland.
Yeah.
We saw him play inside. We saw him play outside. If it's me, I figure out how to play inside with somebody and put him on the outside. Now, maybe you need him. Maybe it's more important for him to play nickel corner with all the slots and stuff that you see that are really, really good players.
Yeah.
Maybe that's their thought.
Now, the other issue yesterday in terms of personnel, I don't know that anybody had a better day for their reputation with as few snaps than Leighton Vander Esch, who we've talked about on the show that he's been so good for them, and a lot of people don't seem to see it for whatever reason. I think you saw really quickly when he's out of the lineup, you go, oh, there it is. Okay, I now see what it looks like without him. So I'm just going to have to assume what happened is Leighton Vander Esch, I feel like, and I think you've talked about this too, one of the things that Leighton has struggled with at times early in his career was his eyes. His eyes weren't always great. I think he's been playing with really good eye discipline this year. And I think as soon as you saw that leave the lineup, you saw two guys who weren't playing well with it. I thought Anthony Barr and Damone Clark were really bad yesterday.
Yeah, they weren't good. And, and the thing with Anthony Barr, he was really, really good on the goal line last week in that stand.
Yeah. All 11 guys were.
They were really good. But he looked out of position. He looked slow. I'm not going to blame him for the playing the slot and having to carry Christian Kirk up.
How did he get? I don't blame him for that, but how did he get put on it?
I didn't know how at all. It just.
Were they running? Did they have traditional 4-3 personnel on that snap or what?
I need. When it happened, I was so like watching what was going on. Like I need to tomorrow go and look and see exactly how he got bumped into that spot.
Yeah,
because that shouldn't have been.
Jacksonville was smart. Yeah, that's exactly. Throw it to Christian.
You get the pick. You get the picks and the guy upfield.
Yeah.
I mean, that's good football right there. But I need to figure out how did he get caught in a situation where he's in space with Christian Kirk. That's a bad miss right there. Really bad miss.
And if Leighton Vander Esch is going to miss the Philadelphia game, Mike McCarthy said that today.
Yeah.
It sounds like he could be out a few weeks here as they get a handle on this. I mean, can they afford to just roll with Barr and Clark, or do you think they may need to you got to scan the waiver wire? You may need to find somebody.
Yeah, I mean, let's see what happens with Jabril Cox. I mean, do they want to, do they really might not have much of a choice, at least, I should know exactly who's on the practice squad and stuff too, Bob, but that might be something that, that they have to look at as well. But to me, it really is about, Jabril Cox and maybe him getting an opportunity to play. But you're absolutely right. The one thing that Leighton Vander Esch has been able to do is the misdirections and things like that don't bother him. When everybody else is, and you're right that Clark wasn't good and Barr wasn't good, and I've been kind of waiting for Clark to really, really take that next step. And he hasn't been really consistent so far.
Yeah.
I know at LSU.
To be fair, he's being asked a lot more than they ever expected to ask him this year.
You're absolutely right, but he's out there playing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they put you on the field, you need to perform.
You do, yes.
And so, they're in a little trouble at linebacker.
Here's what I thought yesterday, and I had this in my notes when I was watching them play with DeMarcus Clark and Anthony Barr. I said this looked like Mike Nolan's linebacker core.
Yeah,
like guys who just are undisciplined, get lost with the eye candy. I mean, they hit. I think they talked about it today. They hit 3 jet sweeps for like 40 yards rushing or something yesterday.
Yeah, I think it was 50. I think the one back receiver it was 39. And why am I going brain dead on?
Yeah, I know who you're talking. I can't remember. He was the one doing all the punt returns and everything.
Yeah,
too.
Exactly. I don't know why. Every once in a while, I lose track of these names. I'm sure somebody will remind me of it when they listen to this podcast. But yeah, I mean, you got killed. You got killed on the jet sweep stuff. That was as bad as it gets right there.
One more question for you here before we hit our listener mailbag. Do the Cowboys have a Michael Gallup problem?
Yeah, because to me, when Michael Gallup, I'll be honest, Bobby, he wasn't open yesterday. I mean, I was trying to watch and, and like CD's open and Brown it's open, and I'm watching Gallup and I'm not seeing anything getting open.
Which really quickly, because I know we're going to move to the mailbag, I do want to say right now, CeeDee Lamb was fantastic yesterday. We've gone 35
absolutely
minutes
was.
without mentioning him. CeeDee Lamb was great yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely he was. And, that's the thing that, but you needed somebody else other than CeeDee Lamb, to be great in that game, and that's the thing about it is when you're trying to, make plays and trying to win a game, you need somebody other than CeeDee Lamb out there, making plays too,
right.
And it looked like CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma is who that looked
like.
Oh
yeah. That
the run after catch and
which great block by Gallup on that play, but
yeah.
I mean, in general, that may be the question. We get Jerry Jones tomorrow morning. When you hear this podcast, we may have already interviewed Jerry. I think that may be one of the questions here, and we've asked it in different ways, but I'm curious now, especially with the Michael Gallup issue, and you signed T.Y. Hilton, and you're still pushing for Odell Beckham. Just be like, is there any regret at all on Amari? Is there any regret on Amari?
I looked up that guy's name, Jamal Agnew. I don't know why I could. I don't know why I couldn't remember Jamal Agnew, but that's who was running the Jets.
Look, here's the thing. Running backs wearing 39 are generally not going to be guys we notice, I don't think. Typically.
I'll tell you what, that guy's a hell of a punt returner, a hell of a kickoff return guy.
He made me nervous a couple times.
Well, how about them punting to him right before, before Jacksonville kicked the game-tying field goal? Yeah. I was worried about him catching the ball and going about 40 yards on you is what I was worried about.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, he was a concern for them on Sunday.
Hey, let me ask you this. Speaking of this real quick, of returners, has the returner, if you need a wide receiver spot, you thinking about moving on from this returner guy?
Returner has not been good. Not lately. The last few weeks, I was watching stuff yesterday. He was. I don't know what he was seeing. Like we're in the press box. We get a pretty good view of
sure. You see stuff open up and all that.
And I didn't see what he was seeing on like any of his returns yesterday. He got a little close, but
man, I wonder. I mean, you wouldn't have anybody, right? I mean, maybe you could, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, he is explosive. There's no question, but the bang for the buck. I don't know if they've got the bang for the buck.
It hasn't been there. Yeah. No, it hasn't been there like they were hoping. You're listening to the Love of the Star podcast. The Love of the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get podcasts. All right, Brian, it is now time for our Dean Julia Love of the Star mailbag.
I hope you have a question from Dean Julia. I know he's asked
two of them. Dean Julia question?
Let's get one. Let's
go. Let me kick off first with Monique Riddick.
Okay.
Monique's question is, what should be the game plan moving forward now that they're in the playoffs? What are the chances in the playoffs given this stuff? So here's the thing, is that the Cowboys in all likelihood, even with, if you haven't heard yet, we'll talk about it more later this week, Jalen Hurts looks really questionable to play against the Cowboys next week, but they put themselves in a hole that's going to be really difficult to overcome. They're down 3 games to 3 to play. And so they're likely not going to win the division. They're likely not going to fall out of the 5 spot. So given that question from Monique Broadus, do you change any approach over these next 3 weeks? Do you look for rest for certain guys?
Yeah. I maybe you go try and you get the 11th victory, you get the 11th win, so you solidify that 5th spot, so you make sure that you're likely dealing with whoever comes out of that mess of the NFC South.
Yeah.
Whether it's Carolina, the Saints, Tampa, whoever comes out of that mess, that's who you want to make sure that you play in the first round. Okay. So secure, get the victory if you can. If you have to go against Gardner Minshew this week and go for it and win the game, go for it and win the game. You know what I'm saying? So you get the 11th victory. You're playing on a short week against Tennessee. I would have a select group of maybe 2 offensive players, 2 defensive players. One of them maybe being Micah Parsons.
I was just about to say, if you beat Philadelphia and you are on a short week in Tennessee, Micah is the one guy. If you tell me I get to rest one guy, I'm not playing Micah.
Micah Parsons needs to be one of the inactive guys. Okay.
He's banged up. He needs rest.
Yeah. So get him some rest. Maybe get somebody else some rest as long as you can. Hell, maybe you're in a situation at Tennessee short week. I don't know if you want to. I mean, maybe the last game of the year you don't want to play Dak, that kind of thing. Maybe a Tony Pollard. Maybe you got to be very mindful. But I would take I would try and win the Philadelphia game to get to 11.
Yeah,
and then, but depending on really how long term. Now, what would be crazy is if this injury to Hurts, it's like a 3-week injury. Yeah,
it's very muddied. Sean Sharif, our teammate at 105 The Fan, shared screenshots from 3 different reporters where one says not long term, one says 3 weeks, then somebody else says out until sometime deep in the playoffs. And it's like there's a whole lot of muddied reporting here, but at the very least, it seems like he's in doubt for this week.
If it turns into he's out for 3 weeks or into the playoffs, you got to play every game to try and win. Because
if it turns out he's out for 3 weeks or into the playoffs, they're really going to be kicking themselves about losing this game yesterday.
Yeah. Well, how about the Green Bay game?
Yeah, that one too. Very, very, very similar losses.
You're what, 3 games behind Philadelphia?
Yep.
You lost to them. You lost to the Packers. You lost to Jacksonville. They beat the Packers and they beat Jacksonville.
Yep.
That's where you are right now. You know, that's why these games are all so important. I mean, you just don't know. You just don't know when that one game. Hey, let me be honest. The Commanders, if they lose or out of the playoffs by one game because of the crap refs that John Hussey's crew, that ref that, happy if the Cowboys got in because of a giant win. But now you know why I have such a problem with NFL officials.
Yeah.
That could have cost them maybe an opportunity. One game could have cost them maybe an opportunity to get into the playoffs. So if we learn that the Jalen Hurts injury is more than 3 weeks for sure, then you need to try and win every one of these games to maybe give you an opportunity to win the division and host one of these games.
Yeah, which Dallas has in this scenario, if Dallas wins out and Philly loses out, Dallas wins the division because they would have
the 1 seed too, probably, right?
Yeah, in all likelihood. I mean, depending on, I guess, what
Minnesota, yeah.
But if Dallas and Philly would have split the season series, but then Dallas would have a better division record because Philly's already lost to Washington, and then they would have also lost to Dallas. Their remaining games here are Dallas. What else do they have scheduled? Dallas, New Orleans, New York. So you're gonna have you're gonna need some assistance here. You're gonna need Gardner Minshew to not be.
That's what I'm saying. If Gardner Minshew's having to play these games, then I'm trying to win them. I mean, and if you find out that they're okay, you beat Philly, and then next week they're playing New Orleans, and they end up just smoking New Orleans at half. Pull your players. Just pull guys.
Yeah, and get specifically, like we said, Micah Parsons.
But you'll have already played the game. I mean, you've already played because it'll be a Thursday game.
Yeah, that's true. So
maybe you have to try and win Philly, and maybe you have to try and win Tennessee, and see what happens the next 2 weeks.
What if you beat Philly, but then it's announced that Hurts will play the following week? Do you make the strategic decision to rest then, or do you only do it once Philly wins another game?
I think I would rest.
I think I'd rest if they said Hurts is coming back. I'd say, all right, just go ahead. You're in all likelihood they're going to beat one of the Giants.
Yeah. If Gardner Minshew, maybe they have that stinker game. Their stinker game was the Colts. The Colts had him dead. But we've learned about the Colts. Colts can't finish anybody.
Oh my gosh! I saw this. I looked this up the other day on Sunday, Brian. The last 4 fourth quarters the Colts have played, they've been outscored 77-3.
Yeah,
it's tough to do that. Question here from Dean Julia.
Who's
Brian?
This? Who's this?
He says, "Hey guys, I counted 12 times that the Cowboys ran for 2 yards or less on first or second down. Why such a commitment to running on first and second down when it clearly wasn't working? CD was carving them up. 41 runs to 30 passes. If that's closer to 35 runs and 36 passes, maybe it's a different ending." I mentioned it to you. You just said there. First 3 quarters, they couldn't stop you throwing the ball. I felt like you had an opportunity to really put them away, and they got a little timid.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Dean's not wrong. The way of beating Jacksonville yesterday was throwing the football.
Yeah.
But but the numbers for Dak. I mean, if you look at like the number of passes he threw and the number he completed, everything and the touchdowns, everything's good, but the interceptions, everything is absolutely the way to win for Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys are his numbers, except he had the 2 interceptions.
Yeah. Last question here from Chris Copeland. How do you fix the secondary? I'm thinking more blitzes with zone behind it. Go all in on pass rush. I will say this. If they're going to play Kelvin Joseph a corner, I don't think you want him playing in zone.
How do you blitz and play zone?
That's difficult with the look that you're talking about. If you're going to blitz guys, then you just have. I mean, unless you're going to play zero.
Play man when you blitz.
But if you're gonna like. You could, I guess, do if you're going to press and have one safety back, but
you could play. Yeah, you could play. You're right. You could play. Man free is what they call it.
Yeah, and then you can just
man underneath with a free safety. Yeah,
I mean that's like the only real option you have.
Sure, I think the way you fix is, I think the way they're going to fix. I think they're going to play Nahshon Wright.
I was gonna say, who do you think starts? Right? You think?
Well, me personally, like I told you, I gave you my plan. I would see if Alexander has a good week and understands how to play nickel, play Alexander as the nickel, and then play Bland on the outside.
Why not Sheffield? I mean, Sheffield's been in the building a little longer, and he played with Quinn. Is there a reason you wouldn't want to try him out?
Sheffield is, from what I understand, is a man corner that has had his problems with some soft tissue injuries. So he's been a guy that you really hang on. I'll tell you exactly what I'll tell you what's going on here. Sometimes I get these guys right. I asked one of my Gang of Seven guys about Sheffield, and hold on a second. Feel free to talk, Bobby, while I look at my phone here.
So the Cowboys were terrible on Sunday. Just broke everybody's hearts. Their play in the second half was sort of a reflection on of Jacksonville as a downtown area, which was really off-putting, I got to say. I'm not a big fan of the Jacksonville area. I know Brian lived there for a little bit. I don't mean to be offensive to Brian's former home or to any Cowboys fans that are living in Jacksonville, but it was an odd experience. I went into a bar, Brian, and they were playing Bob Ross, The Joy of Painting, on a Saturday night in a bar next to the Buffalo game. Weird vibes. Smelled like creek water around there.
Here we go.
Yep. Kendall Sheffield.
There we go. My guys were telling me, very quiet kid, best in press, where he can jam and run. He struggles playing off and zone, not great instincts, struggles with ball skills.
Is this Kelvin Joseph or Kendall Sheffield?
Sheffield. I know.
It sounds like Kelvin Joseph.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Can't stay healthy. Has always have hamstring, calves, and takes long to recover. He's the guy has never flashed or shown like he did the rookie season. And so that's Sheffield. Okay. And here's let me give you Alexander.
Yep.
Real quick. All right.
Who I think was a teammate of Cordrea Tankersley, who we were talking about earlier. Or maybe they didn't cross. I can't remember.
Yeah.
They were both Clemson guys.
Yeah. Here we go with Alexander. He could play. He's a slot only. Physical cover guy, presser grabber, was looking for money and hasn't had the best of character. Wasn't a good influence on a couple of your guys, Curse at Clemson or at Minnesota. So he has legit ability to play inside. I'm sure he's got some have to do some work to get his fitness going.
That sounds like the other part of Kelvin Joseph too. So that's not great either. But but you got lemons. You need to make lemonade. You need to figure it out, and I'm sure the Cowboys will do that. We'll be back with you again later this week, 2 more times, and hopefully have a good breakdown for you on the Eagles and understanding what they're going to do with or without Jalen Hurts. But until next time, we'll talk to you guys later.